When was the last time you truly focused on yourself? Not the version the world expects you to be, not the image you show online, but the quiet, real you. The one buried beneath the noise of everyone else's opinions. Most people live their entire lives chasing approval, validation, and belonging. They wake up already thinking about what others will think. They work hard to impress, not to express. But deep down, there's a voice whispering, "What about me?" That voice gets softer every time you ignore it. Every time you give your power away just to fit into a world that was never meant to define you. Today, it's time to listen to that voice again. You've spent years carrying the weight of other people's expectations, trying to meet standards that keep changing. You've smiled when you were tired, said yes when you wanted to say no, and helped everyone else while slowly forgetting your own needs. But here's a truth that will change everything. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It's survival. It's how you rebuild your strength, your peace, and your purpose. The world tells you to be everything for everyone, but no one teaches you how to be there for yourself. That's why so many people feel lost even when they seem successful. They're running, but they don't know where they're going. When you focus on yourself, you stop chasing people who were never meant to stay. You stop begging for attention that doesn't deserve you. You start to see how powerful it feels to choose yourself, to protect your time, to say no without guilt, and to walk away from what drains your soul. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's you remembering that your energy is sacred, that your mind deserves peace, and that your heart deserves healing. And when you finally choose to focus on yourself, something magical happens. Life starts responding differently. You begin to attract better energy because you're operating from clarity, not desperation. You stop comparing your path to others because you realize no one can live your story better than you. The fog starts to lift. You rediscover what makes you feel alive. The goals you abandoned, the passions you buried, the dreams you once thought were impossible. You become your own source of validation. You start to glow differently, not because the world changed, but because you did. So stay with this message till the end, because what's coming next will help you remember who you are beneath the distractions. You'll see how focusing on yourself doesn't mean pushing others away. It means coming home to the person you were meant to be, the person who deserves peace, clarity, and strength. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to yourself. And when you do that, when you finally make yourself your own priority, everything in your life begins to align, because you finally understand the power of focusing on you. You've been taught to believe that your worth depends on what you give to others, but the truth is your worth has always existed, even in silence, even when no one notices you. When you start focusing on yourself, you begin to realize that the approval you've been chasing was never as powerful as your own acceptance. Every time you choose peace over pleasing, every time you choose growth over comfort, you're reclaiming your power. You're teaching your mind that it doesn't have to chase validation. It can create its own certainty. That's the shift that turns weakness into strength and confusion into clarity. The world is full of distractions designed to pull you away from yourself. Endless scrolling, constant noise, opinions that tell you who to be. It's so easy to lose touch with what really matters. But the moment you pause, breathe, and ask, what do I actually want? You begin to see how much energy you've been wasting on things that don't feed your soul. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring intentionally. You start investing your time and attention where they can grow. You stop giving your peace to people who don't value it. You stop apologizing for protecting your boundaries. Every time you turn your attention inward, you build emotional strength. You start to understand your triggers, your patterns, your emotions. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. You learn that self-awareness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When you focus on yourself, you stop running from pain and start learning from it. Pain becomes your teacher, not your cage. And with every lesson, you become lighter, freer, stronger. You begin to feel grounded in who you are, not in who people want you to be. This is how transformation begins, quietly, gradually. You start noticing the things that drain you and letting them go. You start valuing time alone because solitude no longer feels like loneliness. It feels like power. You begin to realize that peace isn't found in noise or recognition. It's found in alignment with your true self. And once you taste that peace, you'll never crave chaos again. You'll stop fighting for space in other people's lives because you'll finally have space within your own. Focusing on yourself is not an act of isolation, it's an act of elevation. It's choosing to rise, not to escape. It's deciding that your energy matters. It's recognizing that your happiness is not a luxury. It's a responsibility. The more you honor yourself, the more everything around you starts to change. Opportunities open. Relationships heal. The world begins to reflect the peace you've built within. Because when you focus on yourself, you don't just become better for you, you become better for everyone who crosses your path. That's the silent power of self-focus. It doesn't shout, it transforms. Growth begins the moment you stop waiting for someone to rescue you. No one is coming to save you, and that truth isn't meant to break you, it's meant to free you. Because once you understand that your life is your responsibility, you stop giving away your power. You stop waiting for the perfect time, the perfect people, or the perfect circumstances. You realize that every excuse you've been holding on to is just fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. But the more you let fear make your choices, the further you drift from the life you deserve. Focusing on yourself means facing that fear head on and deciding that your future matters more than your comfort. There's a quiet strength that grows inside you when you stop running from your own reflection. You start seeing your flaws not as weaknesses, but as invitations to grow. You stop hating the parts of yourself that need healing and start giving them attention instead of shame. You begin to treat yourself like someone worth fighting for, because you are. Every time you choose self-discipline over distraction, every time you choose effort over excuses, you prove to yourself that change is possible. Progress isn't loud. It's built in small, unseen moments when you decide to keep going, even when no one's watching. The truth is, focusing on yourself requires courage. It demands honesty. It asks you to look at the parts of your life that no longer serve you and let them go. Even when it hurts, you can't become who you're meant to be while holding on to everything that keeps you small. That means releasing relationships that drain you, habits that sabotage you, and beliefs that tell you you're not enough. Letting go doesn't mean losing. It means creating space for something better. It's the art of trusting that what's meant for you will find you once you stop blocking it with what's not. As you grow stronger, you'll notice resistance, not just from others, but from within. The mind will try to pull you back to what's familiar. It will whisper, stay where it's safe. But safe is where dreams go to die. Safe is where potential fades. You were not created to live in the shadows of your own fears. You were created to rise, to explore the limits of your strength, to see what's possible when you believe in yourself fully. Every moment you focus on your growth, you rewrite your story. You replace doubt with direction, hesitation with movement, and fear with purpose. You become unstoppable, not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. And once you taste that strength, the kind that comes from within, you'll never again settle for a life that dims your light. You'll understand that focusing on yourself was never about isolation. It was about awakening. The moment you decide to focus on yourself, the world around you begins to test that decision. Distractions will come disguised as opportunities. Old habits will whisper that it's easier to go back to the way things were. People may question your silence, your distance, your newfound peace. But remember this, not everyone will understand your growth, and that's okay. You're not changing to impress anyone. You're evolving to become who you were always meant to be. Growth can be lonely, but loneliness is not emptiness. It's the sacred space where transformation begins. It's where the noise fades and the truth of who you are starts to rise. You'll notice that the deeper you focus on yourself, the more your priorities shift. What once excited you may start to feel shallow. What once drained you will no longer have access to your energy. You'll crave peace over validation, purpose over popularity, meaning over attention. That's not losing yourself, that's finding yourself. It's the process of stripping away everything false so you can finally see what's real. You'll start to understand that success isn't about having more. It's about needing less. It's not about being seen. It's about being aligned. As your focus strengthens, you'll start creating boundaries, not walls, but gates. Gates that open only for what nurtures your mind, your heart, and your spirit. You'll begin to value time differently. You'll spend it with intention. You'll realize that your energy is your most valuable currency, and where you spend it determines the quality of your life. Protect it. Guard it like it's sacred, because it is. Every moment you give to negativity, drama, or comparison is a moment stolen from your own growth. Focusing on yourself means choosing what deserves your attention and letting go of what doesn't, unapologetically. There will be days when focusing on yourself feels selfish, but that feeling is just the echo of old conditioning. You've been trained to believe that self-sacrifice equals love, but real love doesn't drain you. It fills you. Real love starts with you. When you nurture your mind, your body, your soul, you begin to overflow with strength that naturally uplifts others. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't heal the world by neglecting yourself. The most powerful version of you is the one that's whole, not the one that's exhausted. So keep choosing yourself, even when it's hard. Keep showing up for the person in the mirror, even when the world doesn't notice. Keep watering your own roots until your growth becomes undeniable. The more you invest in your inner world, the more beautiful your outer world becomes, because everything you seek, peace, clarity, success, love, starts from within. Focus on yourself long enough, and you'll realize you were never lost. You were just buried beneath the noise. And now you're finally coming home to your truth. Focusing on yourself means choosing growth over approval, and that choice often comes with silence. Silence from people who once cheered for you but now don't understand your direction. Silence from the world that no longer feels aligned with your energy. That silence can feel heavy, but it's not emptiness, it's clarity. It's the sound of your life realigning. It's the quiet before everything begins to move again. In that stillness, you start to hear your intuition more clearly. You begin to trust your instincts instead of doubting them. You start realizing that your inner voice was never weak. It was just drowned out by too many opinions. When you focus on yourself, that voice becomes your compass. It guides you toward peace, purpose, and authenticity. The path of self-focus isn't about cutting everyone out. It's about connecting deeper with yourself so that your connections with others become real. When you learn to understand your emotions, you stop projecting pain onto people who didn't cause it. When you learn to calm your mind, you stop reacting from fear and start responding with wisdom. You begin to see how powerful self-awareness truly is. It gives you control over what once controlled you. It lets you move through challenges with grace instead of panic. It helps you see that peace isn't something you chase. It's something you create from within. There's strength in stillness. There's courage in reflection. There's power in saying, I need time to understand myself. Most people are afraid of that kind of stillness because it forces them to face their truth. But the ones who face it, the ones who sit with their doubts, their pain, their fears, are the ones who rise stronger than ever. You can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't grow if you keep pretending everything is fine. Focusing on yourself means being honest, even when it hurts. It means looking at the parts of you that need work and giving them patience instead of judgment. As you do this, you'll begin to notice that peace no longer depends on circumstances. It's not about what's happening around you, it's about what's happening within you. You'll find joy in simplicity, beauty in small victories, gratitude in ordinary moments. You'll stop needing chaos to feel alive. You'll stop chasing people, make you question your worth. You'll start protecting your calm like it's the rarest treasure you own, because it is. That inner calm becomes your foundation, unshakable and real. This is what happens when you focus on yourself long enough. You stop surviving and start living. You stop shrinking to fit in and start expanding to become everything you're capable of being. You begin to radiate strength without having to prove it. You become grounded, whole, and free. That's the quiet revolution of self-focus. It doesn't just change your life, it transforms your soul. The more you focus on yourself, the more you begin to understand that everything you need has always been within you. You stop searching for validation in other people's eyes and start seeing it in your own reflection. You begin to realize that confidence is not something you find. It's something you build through self-respect. Every boundary you set, every truth you speak, every moment you choose authenticity over acceptance adds another layer to your inner strength. You start to feel proud of the person you're becoming, not because life suddenly became easy, but because you finally stopped betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. That quiet pride, that deep self-trust becomes the anchor that keeps you grounded no matter what storms you face. Focusing on yourself means learning to give yourself the same love you've given everyone else so freely. It means talking to yourself with kindness when your mind tries to pull you back into doubt. It means celebrating small wins that no one else sees. You start to understand that self-love isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up for yourself on the days when you feel like giving up. It's about forgiving your past, not because it didn't hurt, but because you deserve peace more than you deserve pain. You begin to see that healing isn't linear. It's a process of returning to yourself again and again until you finally feel whole. This kind of growth changes everything. Your energy shifts. You no longer chase what doesn't align with your peace. You stop begging for closure from people who were never meant to understand your worth. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You realize that the only competition that matters is the one between who you were yesterday and who you're becoming today. Each moment becomes a chance to rise a little higher, to act with a little more courage, to speak with a little more truth. And with each step forward, you build momentum, the kind that can't be stopped because it's coming from within, not from external approval. This inner shift doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how you experience life. You start attracting peace because you live peacefully. You attract honesty because you become honest. You attract strength because you faced your weaknesses with compassion. You finally understand that focusing on yourself isn't about becoming distant, it's about becoming real. You are no longer surviving by pretending. You are thriving by existing as you are, and that authenticity radiates. It inspires others to do the same without you ever having to say a word. So keep going, keep choosing yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. Keep believing that the version of you who honors peace, purpose, and presence is the one you were always meant to become, because the moment you focus fully on yourself, you don't just change your life, you change your entire reality. When you begin to truly focus on yourself, you start to see how much of your energy was once scattered in 100 directions that never led you home. You realize that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender, surrendering the need to please, the urge to prove, the habit of overgiving. You stop living for the expectations of others and start living for the truth inside you. That truth becomes your compass. It guides you through the noise, through the confusion, through the moments when everything feels uncertain. It whispers, you are enough, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. Focusing on yourself teaches you to hear that whisper and believe it deeply and fully. You begin to see that strength isn't loud, it's quiet discipline. It's the decision to keep showing up when no one is clapping for you. It's the patience to trust your process. Even when results haven't arrived yet, you learn that the most powerful kind of focus is not driven by urgency, but by purpose. You start replacing the question, what do they think of me, with who am I becoming? That shift changes everything. It takes you from chasing approval to building identity, from performing for attention to creating with intention, from waiting for motivation to living in alignment. There's a moment in your growth where you stop needing validation because you've learned to validate yourself. You stop waiting for others to notice your effort because you've learned to respect your own discipline. You stop asking if you're good enough because you've learned that your worth was never up for debate. That kind of focus brings peace. Not the kind that feels like stillness, but the kind that feels like clarity. You stop rushing, you stop comparing, you start breathing again. You begin to understand that progress isn't about speed, it's about direction. You could be moving fast in the wrong direction and call it productivity, but when you focus inward, you finally begin to move with purpose. The most beautiful part of focusing on yourself is the calm confidence that begins to rise from within. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. It's knowing that you don't have to chase what's meant for you. You don't have to force what's already aligned. You just have to keep growing, keep showing up, keep choosing peace over chaos. You start living life with intention instead of impulse. And that's when everything begins to fall into place. Not because the world changed, but because you did. So stay centered, stay grounded in your growth. Don't rush your healing and don't fear your solitude. You're building something powerful. A life that's led from within. Every time you choose focus over distraction, peace over pressure, truth over noise, you move closer to freedom. That's what self-focus really gives you. Freedom to live, to breathe, and to finally be. As you continue to focus on yourself, you begin to realize that healing is not a destination. It's a way of living. It's the quiet decision you make every day to rise above the version of yourself that once settled for less. Healing doesn't always look like joy. Sometimes it looks like choosing silence over reaction, reflection over chaos, and peace over explanation. It's realizing that you don't have to fight every battle or prove every point. You don't owe the world your exhaustion. You owe yourself your peace. When you finally understand that, you stop chasing validation and start protecting your energy. You start walking with calm strength, not because life is perfect, but because you've learned how to stay grounded even when it isn't. Focusing on yourself means giving yourself permission to evolve without guilt. You are allowed to outgrow people, habits, and environments that no longer align with your peace. You are allowed to create distance from anything that confuses your spirit or dims your light. That distance isn't rejection, it's redirection. It's your soul guiding you back to what feels authentic, to what nourishes you, to what keeps you growing. The more you trust that inner guidance, the freer you become. You stop explaining your transformation to those who only understood your old version. You stop waiting for people to understand your silence. You understand that your growth doesn't need permission. Every time you choose to focus inward, you rewrite the pattern of your life. You start responding to pain with awareness instead of anger. You start seeing endings as beginnings. You learn that closure doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it comes from the acceptance that peace matters more than understanding. You begin to realize that focusing on yourself isn't about building walls. It's about creating balance. It's about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. It's about choosing your own well-being, even when the world doesn't understand. Through that process, your mind becomes quieter, your heart becomes lighter. You no longer need chaos to feel alive. You stop measuring your worth by how busy or productive you are. You start measuring it by how peaceful you feel when you're alone. You begin to understand that success without peace is just noise. Real success is waking up with clarity, walking through the day with purpose, and going to sleep with gratitude. That's what self-focus builds. A life that feels calm yet powerful, simple yet full. And as this awareness deepens, you start to see how everything in life is connected to your inner state. When you're grounded, everything flows differently. Opportunities align. Relationships heal. Energy feels lighter. The outside world begins to reflect the peace you've created within. That's the ultimate reward of focusing on yourself. Not escape, but harmony. You become your own safe place, your own home, your own strength. When you focus on yourself long enough, you start to realize how powerful inner stillness truly is. It's not the absence of movement. It's the presence of alignment. It's the calm that comes when your mind, body, and purpose begin to move in the same direction. You stop feeling torn between who you were and who you're becoming. You stop needing constant validation because you start trusting your own intuition. You begin to notice that peace doesn't have to be earned. It has to be allowed. And the more you allow it, the more your life begins to unfold naturally, without force, without fear, without pretending to be anything you're not. Focusing on yourself teaches you to live intentionally. You start to see how every thought you repeat, every emotion you hold, and every action you take shapes your reality. You become more mindful of what you feed your mind, of what you allow into your space. You start to treat your attention like sacred currency, something too valuable to waste on negativity or comparison. You learn that not everything deserves a reaction, and not every opinion deserves your energy. The more selective you become with your focus, the more power you reclaim. You realize that control doesn't mean manipulating outcomes. It means mastering your response. That mastery becomes your quiet strength, steady, unwavering, untouchable. And with that strength comes a deep kind of confidence. Not the kind built on achievement or appearance, but the kind that grows from inner peace. You stop trying to prove yourself because you already know your worth. You stop needing to be seen because you've already seen yourself. That kind of confidence is rare. It doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It simply exists. Calm, unshakable, and real. It allows you to walk away from what no longer aligns. Not in anger, but in understanding. It allows you to let life flow, trusting that everything meant for you will always find its way. You begin to find beauty in simplicity. You start appreciating small moments, the quiet morning, the deep breath, the clarity that comes after release. You realize that growth doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels like peace. Sometimes it feels like learning to stay still when your old self wants to rush. That's the discipline of focus. The ability to remain patient while you transform. Because true change doesn't happen when you force it. It happens when you stay consistent with what nurtures your soul. As this awareness deepens, life begins to feel lighter. The pressure fades, the anxiety quiets. You no longer live for the next escape because you've made peace with where you are. That's the essence of focusing on yourself. It's not about control, it's about flow. It's not about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you are beneath the noise. And when you live from that space, everything aligns with effortless clarity. When you truly begin to focus on yourself, you start to understand the meaning of alignment, not just with your goals, but with your entire being. You no longer move through life out of obligation or habit. You move with awareness, with purpose, with presence. Every choice becomes intentional. Every moment becomes sacred. You realize that rushing doesn't bring you closer to peace. It pulls you further away from it. You begin to detach from the idea that everything must happen quickly. You understand that real growth takes time and that patience is not weakness. It's wisdom. You stop forcing and start allowing. You stop pushing for control and start trusting your own rhythm. Focusing on yourself brings you face to face with truth. The truth about what fulfills you, what drains you, what inspires you, and what no longer fits your journey. You start recognizing the difference between what you want and what you've been taught to want. You stop chasing goals that were never yours and start creating ones that align with your soul. You learn that peace is not found in having more, it's found in needing less. The more you simplify, the more you feel whole. The more you let go, the more space you create for what truly matters. It's in that simplicity that you rediscover clarity, the kind that can't be shaken by comparison or opinion. As you deepen your focus, you begin to notice how powerful solitude truly is. You start enjoying your own company. You find comfort in your own thoughts. You no longer seek constant distraction because your inner world becomes a place of safety, not chaos. You stop running from silence and start listening to what it's been trying to tell you. That's where transformation happens. In the quiet moments when you face yourself without judgment, when you meet your fears with compassion instead of avoidance. You realize that growth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's simply the peace you feel after releasing something that no longer serves you. This is the shift that changes everything. You stop living on autopilot and start living with awareness. You see how much of your power was lost in overthinking, overanalyzing, and overexplaining. Now, you conserve that power. You learn to say less, to act with clarity, to trust your intuition more. You stop waiting for signs because you become your own. You no longer chase meaning, you embody it. You start living in alignment with your truth. And from that alignment, peace flows effortlessly. That's the essence of self-focus. It's not about becoming harder, it's about becoming clearer. It's realizing that the strongest version of you isn't the one who controls everything, but the one who trusts deeply. When you master that trust, life begins to move differently. Not against you, but with you. And in that harmony, you finally find freedom. As your focus deepens, you begin to see that your peace is no longer negotiable. You stop allowing temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. You stop giving power to opinions that were never rooted in truth. You start protecting your inner calm like it's sacred because you finally understand that it is. When you stop living in reaction to everything around you, you start creating from within. You learn that calm is not a weakness, it's mastery. It's the discipline to stay centered even when life tries to pull you off balance. You begin to move differently, speak differently, think differently. Your energy becomes intentional, your words carry weight, and your silence holds meaning. That's the power that comes from focus. Quiet, grounded, and unshakable. Focusing on yourself teaches you that healing and strength are not separate paths. They are the same journey. You cannot grow without confronting what once broke you. You cannot become whole without accepting the parts you once hid. Self-focus isn't about building armor. It's about removing what was never truly you. The fears, the guilt, the self-doubt, they start to dissolve the moment you stop feeding them with attention. You replace self-criticism with understanding. And suddenly, the weight you carried for years begins to lift. You realize that forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, isn't weakness. It's a declaration that your future deserves more than your past. You begin to detach from things that once consumed you. You stop chasing closure, stop arguing for validation, stop proving your worth. You learn that walking away doesn't mean defeat. It means direction. It means choosing peace over pride, clarity over chaos, freedom over familiarity. Each time you let go of something heavy, you make room for something lighter. That's how transformation happens. One release at a time, one choice at a time. You evolve quietly without the need for applause because your growth is no longer for display, it's for peace. The more you focus inward, the more gratitude begins to fill your life. You start noticing the beauty in stillness, the lessons in pain, the power in patience. You stop rushing to the next goal and start appreciating where you are now. Gratitude becomes your new fuel, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally see that perfection was never the point. Growth was, peace was, wholeness was, and as you live from that awareness, life begins to mirror your inner calm. The chaos loses its power, the noise fades. You stop fighting for things that drain you and start attracting what matches your peace. You understand that focus isn't just about goals, it's about alignment. It's the practice of returning to yourself again and again until your presence feels like home. That's where true freedom begins, in the quiet confidence of knowing that everything you were looking for has always lived within you. Peace teaches you to listen differently, not to respond, but to understand. You begin to hear the quiet truths buried beneath the noise of your thoughts. You start recognizing which emotions are real and which are echoes of old wounds. That's when life begins to slow down in the best possible way. You stop rushing to be somewhere else, someone else, doing something else. You realize that presence isn't about being still. It's about being aware. Every breath becomes a reminder that you are still here, still evolving, still capable of more than you once believed. Presence becomes your superpower. It keeps you grounded when life trembles, patient when things delay, and grateful when blessings unfold in silence. As your awareness deepens, you see how much of your old pain was rooted in resistance. You were fighting what was instead of flowing with what is. You were trying to control outcomes that were never yours to command. But peace doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. It's the understanding that letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that what's meant for you will never require you to beg for it. It means no longer arguing with life, but moving with it. When you surrender, you shift from fear to faith, from pressure to purpose. You learn to rest in uncertainty, not because you enjoy it, but because you trust yourself enough to stand within it. This is the turning point where strength becomes quiet. You no longer need to prove your worth through noise, through effort, through constant striving. You start to find strength in restraint, in patience, in grace. You begin to understand that peace and power can coexist. They always could. The world taught you that you had to fight to be strong, but real power is calm. It's the strength to choose softness when anger feels easier, to remain grounded when chaos tries to shake you. That's mastery. When your inner world is no longer at the mercy of the outer one. And as this strength grows within you, your energy begins to change. You stop chasing things that drain you and start attracting what sustains you. People feel your peace before you speak it. Your presence becomes a reflection of balance, a silent message that says, I've learned who I am. That kind of energy doesn't compete. It simply is. You no longer need recognition because alignment feels better than approval. You begin to see that every delay, every rejection, every heartbreak was not a punishment, but redirection. Life was never against you. It was preparing you. When you reach that awareness, something profound happens. You stop searching for meaning and start living it. You realize that purpose isn't something to find. It's something to embody. It's not out there. It's in how you love, how you grow, how you show up. That realization changes everything because from that moment on, peace and purpose become the same thing. When purpose begins to awaken inside you, something remarkable happens. Your energy no longer scatters in 100 directions. It becomes focused, intentional, and quietly powerful. You start realizing that not everything deserves your attention. Not every opinion matters. Not every invitation needs a yes. And not every distraction deserves your energy. You begin to protect your time like it's sacred because it is. Every second you give away to noise steals from the moments that could have changed your life. Focus becomes a kind of respect, not just for your dreams, but for yourself. It's how you say to the world, I am serious about my growth. And the more you focus, the more clarity rises from within. It's not that life gets easier. It's that you stop making it harder by chasing what was never meant for you. This kind of focus isn't about obsession or control. It's about alignment. It's choosing what adds meaning and letting go of what adds confusion. It's understanding that you cannot move forward while constantly looking sideways. Comparison will always cloud clarity. You don't need to keep measuring yourself against someone else's pace, success, or story. The only person you need to outgrow is the one you were yesterday. Every time you choose progress over perfection, you build momentum that no one can take from you. You start to see results not because life changed, but because your energy did. Your focus transforms ordinary moments into milestones. As this focus deepens, your relationship with effort changes too. You stop forcing outcomes and start creating space for them. You learn that consistency, not intensity, builds lasting transformation. Every small step forward matters, even when no one notices. You begin to trust the invisible work, the quiet mornings, the silent discipline, the unseen sacrifices. That's where growth hides, in the moments no one applauds. True success doesn't happen when people start noticing you. It happens when you start believing in yourself enough to keep going when they don't. You understand that focus is a kind of faith. Faith that what you're building will eventually bloom, even if it takes time. And when doubt tries to return, you meet it differently now. You no longer let it dictate your direction. You listen to it, learn from it, but you don't live in it. You remind yourself that focus isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move despite it. You've learned to separate emotion from intention, to feel everything, yet still choose purpose. That's power, that's maturity. You stop asking, what if it doesn't work? And start saying, even if it doesn't, I'll still grow. That shift is where transformation begins. Focus on yourself, not because the world doesn't matter, but because when you strengthen your center, everything around you begins to align. You don't chase balance anymore, you create it. You don't seek peace, you become it. And that is where your real power finally begins to unfold. When you finally begin to focus on yourself, you realize how much of your life was spent trying to be understood by people who were never meant to understand you. You start to see how much energy went into proving your worth instead of living it. That's when something shifts deep inside. The need for validation fades and the desire for authenticity rises. You no longer crave applause for being who you are. You crave alignment with what you truly value. You begin to choose solitude over noise, reflection over reaction, peace over attention. That's where real transformation begins, in the quiet decision to stop performing for a world that never paid attention to your silence. You start to notice that the more you grow, the smaller your circle becomes. Not because you're arrogant or distant, but because your energy starts speaking a language that not everyone understands. Growth isolates before it elevates. The people who once fit easily into your life might no longer align with your new vibration. That's not loss, that's evolution. Every version of you attracts a different kind of energy. You begin to understand that letting go isn't an act of bitterness, it's an act of faith. Faith that what leaves is no longer part of your story, and what remains is strong enough to grow with you. You learn to bless departures instead of resenting them. That's emotional maturity, the ability to release with grace. This process teaches you to trust silence. You stop fearing stillness because it no longer feels empty. It feels like space. Space for clarity, for healing, for peace to grow. You realize that silence is not the absence of life, it's the preparation for it. Every pause becomes sacred. Every breath becomes a reminder that stillness is where strength is born. You begin to see that the mind that is always racing can never find truth. Peace doesn't arrive when life gets easier. It arrives when your inner dialogue becomes kind. As you strengthen your focus inward, you stop depending on circumstances to define your mood. You understand that happiness isn't a result of everything going right. It's a decision to stay grounded even when everything feels uncertain. You start responding instead of reacting, observing instead of absorbing. You create boundaries that protect your energy, not walls that isolate you. You learn to say no without guilt and yes without fear. You stop living to please and start living to grow. That's what self-focus truly means. Not selfishness, but self-respect. And when you reach that level of awareness, something beautiful happens. Life begins to respond differently. Opportunities that once slipped through your hands start aligning effortlessly. Peace no longer feels like a dream. It becomes your daily rhythm. You realize that when you focus on yourself, the universe focuses with you. Everything you seek outside starts to grow inside. That's where transformation becomes real, quiet, and unstoppable. The deeper you grow into yourself, the more you begin to realize that the real battle was never with the world outside, but with the noise within. Every doubt, every fear, every hesitation was just your mind trying to protect you from pain, even if that protection kept you small. You start to see how often you believed the lies your fear told you, that you weren't ready, that you weren't enough, that your dreams were too far out of reach. But the truth is, fear never meant you couldn't. It only meant you were standing on the edge of something meaningful. Fear shows up when you're close to growth. It's a signal, not a stop sign. And the moment you decide to face it, you start breaking through the invisible walls you built around yourself. You begin to understand that courage isn't loud. It doesn't always roar or demand attention. Sometimes courage is the quiet decision to try again after disappointment. Sometimes it's choosing to speak kindly to yourself when your mind wants to criticize. Sometimes it's simply getting out of bed when everything inside you says, stay still. Every small act of courage rewires your mind to believe in possibility again. You stop waiting to feel ready because you finally realize that readiness is born through action, not before it. The more you move, the stronger you become. Fear fades not because it disappears, but because you stop feeding it with hesitation. This realization changes how you see failure. You no longer treat it as an enemy, but as a teacher. You begin to notice that every setback carried information, every mistake revealed a truth you needed to grow. The pain that once broke you now builds you. You see how failure strips away illusion, leaving only what is real. Your resilience, your discipline, your hunger to rise. You learn to thank failure, not because it's easy, but because it carved out the space for your strength to live. That's when growth stops being something you chase and starts becoming who you are. You start trusting yourself on a deeper level. You stop seeking reassurance from the world and begin finding certainty within. The validation that once kept you moving now feels unnecessary because your focus has shifted from approval to authenticity. You understand that you don't need to be perfect to deserve peace. You don't need to have it all figured out to start walking toward what you want. Progress isn't about doing everything right. It's about not quitting when things go wrong. And through this awareness, your energy begins to shift again. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You no longer seek power. You become it. Because when you focus on yourself, when you stop fighting the world and start healing within, you discover something extraordinary. You were never broken. You were just becoming who you were meant to be. When you begin to see that you were never broken, you also realize that healing was never about returning to who you were. It was about becoming someone new, someone wiser, calmer, stronger. Healing doesn't erase the past, it transforms your relationship with it. The memories that once hurt now serve as reminders of how far you've come. The wounds that once defined you become proof of your resilience. You no longer carry your pain as a burden, you wear it as armor. You start to see that everything you went through wasn't meant to destroy you, but to rebuild you from the inside out. Growth, you learn, doesn't always look graceful. Sometimes it looks like falling apart. But even in that breaking, something sacred is born. Awareness. Awareness changes everything. You start noticing the patterns that once controlled you. You see how much of your suffering came from resisting change, from holding on to what was already gone. You begin to understand that peace isn't found in clinging, but in releasing. Every time you let go, you make space for something better. Letting go isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest form, the courage to trust what you cannot yet see. The moment you stop fighting for what's fading, life starts giving you what's meant to stay. You realize that control was never the goal. Alignment was. And when you live in alignment, life doesn't feel like a battle anymore. It feels like flow. That flow begins when you stop identifying with your pain. You are not your failures. You are not your fears. You are not the mistakes that still echo in your mind late at night. You are the awareness behind all of it. The quiet observer that never breaks, no matter how much the world around you does. When you live from that awareness, you stop reacting to life and start responding to it. You move with intention. You speak with purpose. You choose with clarity. You stop wasting energy trying to be everything for everyone and start becoming something powerful for yourself. That is freedom. The freedom to exist without apology, to evolve without permission, to live without pretending. And through this freedom comes an even deeper truth. You start loving yourself differently. Not the conditional love that depends on achievement or appearance, but a grounded, steady love that says, I am enough as I am, but I'm still growing. That kind of love changes your energy completely. You treat yourself with patience. You forgive faster. You trust your timing. You understand that self-love isn't comfort, it's accountability. It's the daily choice to rise when staying down would be easier. It's choosing healing again and again, even on the days when it feels exhausting. Because focusing on yourself isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's how you finally return home to who you truly are.